Rishi, one of the probably most popular question I get from my LinkedIn DM, my Twitter DM, via email and so on is, Lorenzo, I don't have enough traffic on my website. I can't A/B test. What should I do? Now, I have usually have a response to that question, but I want to hear your response. Hey, would you have like did you ever get that question before? And if so, what do you usually tell them?
I do get that question. And I work with brands that have between, I don't know, 3 million and 15, 20 million in sales. So they're not giant, but they're not small either. But there are people that would say that even that's too small. I mean, there are people that say that you need 120,000 visitors for an experiment period. And I don't know when does this logic end? Previously we used to say you need 200 conversions total in order to run a meaningful experiment. Now we're saying 120,000 users. A whole bunch of things we talk about the power of the experiment and all of these things. And look, I'm not a statistician. I want to caution over here and say that I'm don't know the statistics behind these things. We use statistical tools that tell us, that guide us, like a dashboard. I also don't know how my odometer works, but when my car says I'm going 70 miles an hour, I just trust it's going 70 miles an hour. So the point I want to make here is this. First of all, when I think about, because when I talk to my clients, I realize that they're also making lots and lots of business decisions that are happening outside of A/B testing. And apparently there
Really?
is,
Really
and
surprising.
and apparently there isn't much statistical validation going on that front. So I think we have to kind of look at A/B testing in context. But I think the point here is, if I have a small website now, of course, I want to caution, if you have a website where you're doing, let's say, 4 or 5 orders a day, you know that is too small. There are limitations. I mean, I think they say even if you toss a coin and you get like 7 heads in a row, the probability of that outcome is actually not that small, not as small as we would think it would. Most people would say it's impossible for that to happen. Actually, it's fairly likely. So I think when you have like chronically small transaction counts, then I think there are other challenges. But if you have a decent amount of if you have decent amount of transactions, I kind of feel like there are I kind of know that there are two variables that we have to play with. One is the number of transactions you get. That's one variable, and that's that the more the better for sure. But the other variable that you can play with is the contrast between ideas. And what I mean by that is forcing people to react to something. So like a site like Google, they get so much traffic that they will change the label for ads by, they'll change the font size of it by a little bit, and they can actually get meaningful data that says, hey, actually there's a 2% or 0.04% chance that people will click on an ad when the font size was this much bigger. They can make a business decision based on that. Well, you don't have that kind of data. You don't have that kind of traffic. So how do you run those kind of experiments? You just can't. You can't run experiments where you're making minute changes and you're saying this make a difference, did this not make a difference. My recommendation is to, first of all, if you look at a page is something that is competing. There are lots of elements that are competing for attention. So you have the product images, you have the description, you have the reviews, you have all of these little widgets that are competing for attention. So you need to, first of all, de-emphasize those elements and really make sure that everyone who's coming to that page or wherever it is that you're running this test is really focused on the principal thing that you're testing. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing you do is that when they interact with it, so for example, in my case, I like to have a button that they have to interact with, and that's a signal to me that they have actually raised their hand up and said, this is something I want to get more information about. I then show a pop-up. The sales pitch that I'm showing in that pop-up has to be vastly different from the control. And if it is, then I actually can, even in the absence of statistics, I can actually make some meaningful conclusions. So what I mean by that is, if you're getting like 50 orders a day, and I create a sales page that is so different that people look at this and they react to it, whether they react positively or negatively doesn't matter, and your daily sales goes from 50 to 75 sales, a day, we're talking about, that's a 50% swing in conversion rates that the testing tool will be able to tell you conclusively is making a difference or not. So my point here is that in the absence of massive transactions, really focus in on forcing the user to react to your pitch. I like to do this by very forcefully talking about who we are and what we stand for and what we believe in. And really kind of a lot of times clients will say, hey, we need to be a little more subtle with our messaging. The problem with being subtle is that a lot gets lost in translation and you aren't really saying something. So my approach is to, even if it's off-putting to some people, is to actually say, listen, if you do not satisfy this criteria, please don't buy from us. Here is what we stand for. And what this does is it creates a huge impact on the buyer. They either absolutely hate it, and then maybe there's a group that really absolutely loves it, and there's a clear signal for us. And I can now compare these two. Now, once you've figured out what people are responding to, now you can start building a plan around that. So it's anyway. So Lorenzo, I don't know if this,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this makes total sense. In general, my response to that question is actually like more first principle type of thinking. I just go because I try to put myself in the shoe of the CEO and the owner of the business. And the question I would ask is, deciding to A/B test, right, and run experiments on a website is a kind of like a portfolio decision that somebody needs to make. Because in my eyes, right, I'm allocating the budget to running A/B test, which means that budget I'm not allocating it to something else, right? So if I were like, I don't know, $1 million a year in revenue business, you're probably better off at using that budget that you're thinking about putting into CRO into, for example, improving the product, right? Like I can totally tell you that you're gonna see a better growth and higher growth if you spend that budget, and which also includes like, okay, maybe like I need to change the formula of my product, or I need to do some engineer work. So I would first try to figure out how to improve the product rather than say, okay, I have 1 million users, time to test. I wouldn't go ahead and test it either, right? So for me, it's like, if you first improve your product, before even thinking about testing, because that's where the highest growth potential there is.
Yeah.
If you have answered yes, okay, fantastic, you already have like a kick-ass product, then the second thing I would do is, it's very likely that since you started a business, you've taken tons of decisions that you didn't A/B test. So why now all of a sudden you want to start A/B testing those decisions? So if you want, you can find a sort of like middle ground between not testing at all and testing, which, if you ask me, is where customer research comes in, right? Like, if you started a business and it's all about, I think, this is going to be good, based on opinions, now all of a sudden you have some sort of like qualitative data and quantitative data to make decisions. Yeah, you're not going to be able to test it. It's fine, right? Not every...
You can still use common sense, Lorenzo, also is a useful guiding tool, right?
Exactly. So I'm not sure why people are so obsessed with like, I don't have enough traffic for... I'm not sure, Rishi.
Well, and I just to recap what you said, I agree with the two things you've said. Focus on the product, focus on user research. I'm going to make and mention a third thing, and I would place these things as being equally important. You can pick any of these three paths. The third thing I would do is messaging testing. And I'm a huge believer of this. I think we underestimate the importance of this. Is that products are essentially the manifestation of a point of view. right? If you think about what Nike is, what running shoes are, what lifting weights is, what going on diet is, all of these things, all of these things that people create products around, we're actually selling a certain outcome in a certain way. There's you can lose weight by also taking a bariatric operation. You can also lose weight by running a marathon. You can also lose weight by reducing your food intake. You can also lose weight by taking medications. And different people, based on their philosophical preferences, some people might say, I want to go for a bariatric surgery because that I don't have a problem with that. Other people will say, no, I will not do that. I will take a natural source and I'll figure out a natural way of doing this. And so what you're really selling is a point of view, right? And so I think that is something that we can really strongly test. And so to me, like that's an area that I'd really double, triple down on that. So if I'm working with a client that sells fishing gear, what I'm really selling is the idea of solitude, being out in the open, being out in nature, having this one-to-one relationship with the fish. And so I construct a story around that. And I see how people respond to it,
Yeah, and I want to say 2 reasons why this is important. First of all, every single market within the e-com industry, within the direct-to-consumer industry, is extremely, extremely competitive. Okay? Doesn't matter where you pick, it's very, very, very likely that you're in a competitive niche. And, be clear about your messaging is a great way to be different than everybody else. The second reason is because 90% of the companies don't focus on messaging, unfortunately, and they don't focus on positioning. They are all afraid of, oh, if I take a stand, right, and I position myself in X, with X angle, then I'm gonna have to give up on a bunch of other potential customers, or no, I'm not gonna grow as much, right? So again, super competitive market is one reason, and then because nobody does it. So it's very likely that now all of a sudden people are understanding why they need to buy your product. So 100% with your Rishi.
And keep in mind, if your conversion rate is 3%, unless your conversion rate is 85%, if your conversion rate is 3%, your visitors are already taking a stand and 97% of them are rejecting you. So please don't be shy to show your personality. What's the worst that would happen? So so this I just wanted to kind of discuss this idea of what to do in a low traffic website scenario. And the 3 ideas we just mentioned hopefully will help you. Tell us in the comment section which one you think you like the best, which one makes the most sense. What's your approach for testing in a low traffic situation? What do you do? Someone might say UI UX stuff. So we don't know. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you like these kinds of topics, subscribe to our channel. We are publishing a video every day, and we'd love to share everything we know with you guys. Have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.